Hi everybody, pop in and say hi. Welcome to the stream. 5 of you watching. Wendy, good evening to you. Cheers, Jim. I appreciate that, mate. Thank you so much. Glad to have you on board. Nine people in the background. Come and say hi, people. Let me know you're there. Let me know who it is. It'd be nice to say hello to you. Hope you're well, Jim. Oh, I do hope so, Luke. Thank you for joining us. Yes, they did. That's what I'm painting on one now. Thank you, Wendy. Had a whole load. They're all tucked away out in the garage. There's a few more that I've got ready to go on. I love them. And I did that little piece that you may well have seen me do of the St. Michael's mount. I did that on one of those boards too yesterday. I thoroughly enjoyed that, and I actually did another one over there on one of the Romney Marsh, which I will put out on tomorrow's what's his name Instagram offer. No, I hear that America is not doing so great. I'm glad you are, chum. Let's hope that everything sorts itself out very, very quick smart over there. It's not nice to keep hearing all the troubles one way and another, especially with all the COVID and everything else that's going on. Down in the south here, we are starting to plummet towards heights again, which we would rather not. It's really unfortunate, but it does seem to suggest the numbers that we are going very much the same way. Good evening, Keith. Teresa, good evening to you too. Nice to be with you. Glennis, good evening to you as well. Okay, so I hope that this will be a nice evening. And we will get underway very shortly. Tracy, good evening. That's good. We've got a nice little number and it's growing. A quick little glug. Okay, oops. Good evening, Derek. Cheers, Teresa. I appreciate that too. Right, now then, this is a painting that my wife has been badgering me to do for some time. Now, I'll state right from the off that I may not be able to put the artwork up for you to copy or do. Although, having said that, in truth, you don't really need this one of the Cheetah. You can do... There are so many Cheetah references out there that I'm sure you can procure one to do your own version with. The reason that I can't use this one is that this is not my photograph. This has been given to me a few years ago by a very kind friend of mine from Germany called Stefan Kraus, who is also a former winner of the German equivalent of the BBC Wildlife Artist of the Year. He won that on a photograph that he took sitting next to Catherine and I in Africa. And this is one of his pictures, and as I say, he let me use it for myself and for Catherine to use, but I therefore do not have the rights to put it out for general usage. So forgive me for that, but I'm sure you can get your own cheetah reference from somewhere to have a go at something very, very similar. All right, so we will carry on. John, good evening to you. Well, I appreciate you joining us when you can. I appreciate that your life is a little bit busier than it was once. So thanks for taking the time and coming along tonight. And that'll be great. All right, now, where did I get all this from? Well, I've told you where the photo come from. That's one part of it. The thing, how did I get it on here? Okay, so this morning, as Wendy and Judy both know, that I have spent the whole time sketching. I don't know how well that looks on here, but I spent all morning sketching this little fella, and from there, I don't know if you can see it, but I used some carbon trace down paper and I put it underneath the sketch on top of here, and you can see I used I actually had these, are very, very cheap. I got these a few years ago for drawing, and these are like stencil embossing needles, and all I did is I just went round. I didn't do all the detail, just enough to get and plot the whole thing, but what it then did was left me some carbon outline on my canvas panel. Now it's very hard to do that sort of transfer on a flappy canvas, you know, on a canvas, stretch canvas. Good evening, Leora, lovely to have you with us. And Brooklyn, good evening to you too. I hope I don't let you all down. There you go, nice to have you on board, guys. Yes, so that's how we got from the sketch of what you're looking at to, and I think, well, I took a lot of time with it. I hope it's about right. It looks about right. As I say, I don't know if I can hold it up. You might even see the scoring from the embossing tool. You may or may not. I don't know if the light will catch that. But it's cartridge paper I drew on, so I did have to press quite hard. You wouldn't do it with a ballpoint pen. The only other alternative to doing that is to draw through a very, very thin piece of paper. And quite honestly, I hate sketching on thin paper. I like to have at least a little bit of decent... oh, thank you so much, Leora. That's very, very kind of you. Much appreciated. Yes, I just like thicker paper to draw on. So, that's said and done. By pressing hard. Now I have then gone over that after I put that on here. The reason I've done all this because it would take so long. I've got to tell you all now that this painting is not going to be done this week. Okay, it may not even be done in 2 weeks. I do like to have my wildlife paintings look good, and I will take as long as it takes to paint it. Now then, that would then lead us into two options. Either I will tell you now that it will be at least 2 weeks doing, of which we can terminate it after the second week and I just finish it off if it's unfinished in my own time, or we carry on for a third week, which I think is probably ramming it down your throats, and I don't really want to do that, but it depends on everybody, of course. Good, that's great. That's the same sort of thing, Tracy. That works very well. These are just cheap ones I got from somewhere. I don't even know where I got them from now. So anyway, yes, so I will take my time with it, but I felt that this took me all morning to get to that, and I felt that yes, they do actually, Leora. That's very true. But the 2 hours it took to, the morning it took to do that would have taken 2 hours, 4 hours just to get the stream to this stage. So forgive me for that, and I don't apologise, because it takes as long as it takes, as Leora says, and I'm quite happy to get this far with it so I can start at least putting some colour in. But what I did do is I just felt that it would be nice just to show you how I get some of the colour, some of the umber. I draw in umber around my the trace down, and hopefully I find that trace down on this paper does slide the paint a little bit, but paint carefully. I do use a rigger or a very fine brush, because there's no point in taking your drawing and then doing all the efforts of getting it traced down and correctly as it should be, and then do a really clumsy paint over with your colour. Now this is just burnt umber. This is straight out of the tube, burnt umber, and all I'm doing is just finishing off just to show you what I would normally do and what I actually did on the rest of this morning. And that's all it needs. It just needs to bring it up to speed. You have a basic outline. Now if you went away and didn't try to do any of this further on after this will dry and you won't rub off any graphite in the process. It will be there and you can continue on. What I purposely also didn't put in was any of the spots. Now I've got my sketch here. I've also got the photograph up there, and I can use the pair of them now just to give me the idea of where some of these markings should be. I'm going to put a little bit of blue into the umber just to take it down a little bit, and I'm using a thicker brush here, and I need a bit more fluid to it as well. Now I'm not using liquid for this. Liquid fine detail can make the paint slide quite a bit, and this surface, it does really slide around very, very easily. So all I'm going to do is just mark in some of my darks now, which are my primary little spots on this fella, and so I can then come back in with some lights over the top. Now I'm going to be moving. I've got a great deal of detail, so I've got my picture well up on my screen and a lot closer from my painting point of view than you can see it. So I can see a lot more than you can as it works out. Now I'm just tapping around. There's been a little bit too much blue in there. Let's start putting some darker colour in here, and get your darks in as soon as you possibly can with this, because obviously you're going to put your lights in, but if you put too much light fur over to start with, then you're going to come unstuck. I need to put in a bit more information on here. That line sort of start breaking down through there. And I'm using a, well, it's a pretty much worn out brush, as you can see. If I can get that under the screen reasonably well, you can see you can see how wrecked and splayed that is meant to be a lovely dagger. So it's anything but, really, to be quite honest. But in no disrespect to being a rosemary brush, which it is, even her brushes are not absolute miracle makers. They can put up with so much, but when it gets an onslaught from me over several paintings, of course, it's going to start tiring and come out of good, useful lifespan, as it were. Just bringing some of those darks down through here. And I'm drawing now as I go. As I say, when people do this sort of thing, is just to put in as much information as you really need, because you can come back in and create much more by not having to worry about all your drawing. You know, you've got your drawing, you've got your sketch, you've got the reference, and to that end you've got all that you need to start making this work. So at the moment it's going to be a slow build up of information over the whole animal. Let's just catch up with the thing here. Parts from craft Leo. Okay, oils on time. Points to hi Paul. Hi Paul, good evening to you, sir. Ah dear. Good. Okay, well that's another little problem for you sorted out, Wendy. Alright, now I am going to come into this area with something a little bit different in a moment. I'm just trying to bring up to speed so I can then work in the darks around the little fella's eyes little bit of dark in here over the top of that pupil, and just come around and reinforce some of these areas in here with a bit more paint than I scantily put on earlier, just to protect the drawing. That's what that was about. Now we're coming in with a lot more detail, and certainly we're coming in with a much greater strength of pigment through here to get it set up. I'll always paint the eyes first, 99 out of 100 times. Very few times when I don't do that. I will always go in with the eyes, because I feel that I put so much effort into the eyes. If I don't get them right, then what's the point in going all the rest of it? And similarly, you know, it's easier to start again and rework the whole painting if you've gone wrong with the eyes. You can always work backwards from the eyes as well. Coming in with a little dark passage up through there, trying to take my lines out. Now we're going to come in some of those darks with lighter values, don't worry about that. I'm trying to set the scene moving forward. Now one thing, whether you work whatever medium you're working on with any animal, you have to watch the direction of the fur. If you look at the top of the cat's head, the furs are really long, and you would use them in the direction of that they go. And as you come down the head, they get somewhat shorter here, until you come down to the bridge of the nose when they're almost just pinpricks, and they are very, very short hairs. But on each and every one of them, you really do need to have a situation where you follow the course and the layering of the fur, especially on these little cubs, because they have so much baby fur around the mane and the head for well into their adolescence, and you can see that, and it's a long time. This starts to go first, but this hangs around for a long time, and it's just a good way of telling a youngster from a mature cat, certainly when you're out in the wild watching them. So I'm just tapping away, and you'll see me drop a little bit of colour here and there outside of black spots, because the black spots may only appear to be in a certain place, but they do travel on with little bits of dark coming through, little bits of light, and vice versa. And it's a great way to create depths and layers within the first structure itself. Now if I do go quiet, it is purely because I'm concentrating. I don't normally do a wildlife piece like this live, never have done. At least I don't think. Well, I've done lots of demonstrations at clubs and shows and stuff, but not actually on YouTube, I don't think. So it's a first for me in that regard. I have got a new Patreon film coming out for the $10 tier, which will be out either this week, later this week, or early, at the latest, early next week, to qualify for your November whatever we call that tier, whatever it is. Yes, so that will be there, and that is an oil painting, which will be, majority of it will be narrated, not completely all narrated. It's a long film. It's going to be 1 hour and 3/4 or just under that, so it will be quite a lengthy one, but it's of a black-faced impala from Etosha, and to that end I had a lot of fun doing it. It's only a small 8x10, but I had a lot of fun painting it. And you can see I'm getting very, very quick and lengthy with some of these marks. I'm watching the lines and I'm looking at the darks and the lights, and I'm putting dark values in, not necessarily black at this stage. They can go in with a bit of black later on, but just to give me a sense of where they're emanating from and their direction and the length of each of the hairs, as it were. I'm not trying to measure each hair, don't get me wrong, but I am trying to pay due heed to the fact that this is part of that kiddie, child, adolescent mane that this youngster, and this is probably around about 3 months old, 4 months old, something like that, I think, if my memory serves, from what Stefan was telling me when he let me have these pictures. He's given us several to use from a trip that he did down in another part of Namibia just before we met him again in Etosha. And so yes, that's really good. So anyway, I'm just carrying on and yabbering away as we go. If you've got any questions, then put them out, because I'll look up every so often. Worn down press make interesting mark and can be very absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. Right, and just coming down now to this area. And now I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to put every spot exactly as you see it on that photograph. I'm not. The spots will be randomly placed, and they may coincide with one that you see. It really doesn't matter, but I am simply putting these spots on the back and looking at where they are long, like down through the chin here. We've got the underneath of the chin through that. Actually, I haven't drawn that in, so let's just come down there. There's underneath the chin goes through to there, and we've got this section through here. So I did actually have it in there, so I don't need that. And there is a little shade of colour under there, which I'm just going to gently glance in so that I don't forget that, like I just forgot the line. But then through here we have got that ruff coming down, and we've got a few colours of line coming that way. I just want to check they're in the right place. Don't think they are. I think they are going to come down to here, like so. That's better, and that gives me enough to get these few smaller ones that are coming down here in place too. Then there's a little gap, and then they start up down through here. So there's lots of scratchy little marks, and they're little taps. They will be strengthened when I come back down to the area, but I am literally I's and T's. I'm foreshortening some of them as the body comes around and curves away from me. So I've got a foreshortening of mark down through here, and then they come back a little wider and broader over on the shoulder, like so. A little bigger. That one is quite a long, lengthy hairs on that one. We'll remember that when we come back to it, like so. A bit more colour. Already we are 23 minutes in, and I'm still sketching in spots. And it was a big question earlier today in my head: how far do I take the pre-drawing, the pre-painting, the block in before I talk to you guys this evening? And do I do more than I've done? Well, I can't change that. I made a decision, and however long this takes to do is how long it takes to do. Right, I'm going to leave that to there's a couple of spots just rounding out on that bit of rough that comes down there. Couple of minor spots in there which we can put in. And okay, now I think to the lesser or greater degree we are ready to continue on with our marks. So I'm going to be using the same brush for a while yet, and I'm just going to keep on building now some of these darker areas, which I've been doing already, it's got to be said. I'm not, oh, I don't know what that was. Something on the phone. And I'm just going to make a few more gestural marks that are not actual black marks of the cat. There are many little flecks in the head, and you can see those, but I'm sort of generally giving it a grubby appearance overall, and then I will change some of that for warmer colors as I come to build it up. But what I'm trying to do is just suggest some of my shadow areas around marks, around dark marks, down through here. Subtle little blends out from the center, and they will become evident as to why, I hope, a little further in. So we're going to come back very shortly and start concentrating on the eyes with a smaller brush, but I'm going to come in with a definite blue on that pupil there. There's a little bit of cobalt gone in, same on there, and I hope that when I come back in with the light colors that they will show up nicely as I would require them to do. Okay, now there is that brush. I could carry on using it, or I could plump for a smaller round brush for detail. And to be quite honest with you, I don't have that many small round detail brushes left. They do get caned very quickly. I have a small semi-rigger. It's a little bit split. Hopefully it will do all that I need it to do. And all I'm going to start doing is refining some of these marks around the eyes now. I will come in with some fresh color very, very soon, but I'm just trying to put some flecks in. That reverse or negative painting is almost suggesting the little lighter hairs that come across and hang over the eye itself. And we're going to be using that in this fashion further in, but not yet. These longer hairs that I'm just showing you now will be put back in again when we've done the background. And we're not going to touch the background just yet because I've got a lot of maneuvering to do around here, and I want to play around with that later on and then come back in as eyes and teeth for the rest of it. Okay, so I'm going to come in, I'm going to mix up some oxide of red, which if you don't have oxide of red, a little bit of cadmium yellow deep into that. Oxide of red is just a transparent form of burnt sienna. So if you have that, then use burnt sienna, and we can come in now with a basic coloring for the eye itself. Try hard not to lose any of the shape that you've done with your wet paint underneath the lovely darks. And we're going to come in with a base color, this base color, like so. And the same for the other side. We're coming in with a base color of this lovely mix of oxide of red and burnt sienna, cadmium yellow deep, sorry. Now the thing is, as I said to you, that you've got the that lovely transparent red color, but you've got a little bit of lifting from the cad yellow deep, and that's all I'm going to do for the second. Really, I don't need to do too much more. We will come in with highlights in a little while. What I want to do is now build the look, a little bit of fresh liquid, not the more fluid one, just the regular one out the tube. I'm using some cadmium yellow, and I'm just going to tap in and gently lift some of that colour, a little bit of white into that, just to shift it a gear, make it a little lighter, not too much, don't go everywhere, just put some to one side, not all over. If you do that, you lose too much. Right, so let's just come back in, and we're just going to gently tease our colour out and start bringing the iris up. And it's not too different to what we have done in the past with the cat's eye with coloured pencils. We are looking at creating those lovely little patterns as best we can, albeit that we haven't got the size of the picture that we had in the the coloured pencil DVD video, but we have got nonetheless to take the same sort of care. So I move in small steps, a little bit at a time. Come back in if you want a little bit of dark, a couple of dark marks here, which I'm going to put those in, and they go all the way out to the side there. And we're going to close up the top there with some rich dark brown, but it's got a little bit of the orangey red into it, so that we come up into this area and it's dark. It's part of the iris, it's not part of the skin. So we can put a real dark in here, which has got a bit of blue in it, and that will give us a slight segregation between those two areas. Now it's got a little bit sharp up there. We will change that further on. Just going to come around this way, and we will be lightening up quite a bit more yet. I'm just trying to suggest the beautiful colours that you're seeing in the eye and around the iris. Somewhat lighter on this side. It's catching a bit more light than this one. Dark reds across the top here, maybe even a little bit of Venetian red, just to bring it back to the red from the bluish nature there. And we pretty much covered it there, but we're just going to come over, give it a little bit of redness, and then I'm going to start looking at some more of the light colours. Just every time you do this, you do a little less. Now you can, if you want, finish the eye at this point, or get it to almost the finished state, or you can move around and do other parts of the painting. When I get a situation where I'm really quite happy with the eye itself, I'm quite happy sometimes to leave that and come back to it and address other areas of the painting that I feel could be started. Just going to come around here with a slightly lighter red than the dark that we had there, following around there, and we've got these dark eyelashes reflections that are coming across into the edge there. And with a light, we've got that nice cool light. Actually, I'm going to put a little bit of that green, clean the brush, a little bit of lovely green colour, which is the it's actually a Windsor's colour. It's a bit like a light version of the turquoise, but I'm just going to use that down through here on the side of the eye there. Just gently tease that in, come back in if it's not enough, and just bring it a little stronger down the edge of the eyeball. There's just a bit there, just catching a little bit of light, not a lot. Okay, let's look at putting the catch lights in, and I know it's relatively early, but let's come in with some of that green, a bit more white, and a little bit of cobalt blue too. Now when you look at these glassy reflective areas, it's the same as the cat one again. We've got a piece of blue, which is, as the light source comes across the pupil, the pupil's black, so it reflects it as a blue. Now you've got to be careful when you do this, you don't overdo it, because you can make the cat, or any animal that you do this too much blue with, you can make it like a haze, and it makes it look as though the cat's got is blind. You just have to watch that. Just going to bring a little light there, and it's steady as it goes. And I warn you now that the patrons among you, when you see my little antelope painting, there is a lot of painting, but there is a lot of assessing, reassessing, little steps forward and one or two back. Just checking my drawing and checking before I proceed. There's a lot of work goes into something like this to make it look good, and to that end it really is not a fast process, or it shouldn't be. It can be, I suppose. It depends how fresh or loose you want to make it. I like putting detail in as best I can, So I will take my time and do my best to make it look as it should. I'm going to come across and refill the other way on the other eye, and just try and check some of these marks. Just observations, a little tap there, and just a couple, one there, and one just out there. So we've pretty much done the eye, and if we feel that we need to do more, we can do more. It's not a big problem at all. But we've gone so far with it, and we need to put a lot more around it now to make sure that what we've done here relates to what we put out here. It's all about various areas of lights and darks moving away so that we can gauge our values as we move away too. But we've essentially we've got a good start and we're ready to move on. The eye isn't totally finished. It may be that I leave it until next week, as it were, or I come back to it later on in this session just to see if we need to put more in before we leave it to dry off, and then we can tweak some more further on. Now I come in quite a sort of a reddish colour here, which I think is probably a little bit too red. I'm going to use some transparent oxide of yellow now. That's like a transparent yellow or raw sienna, sorry. Not thinking. Just come in, turn that down a little bit there. That's not a problem. If it was a problem, you've got two options. You leave it, go over it if it's too much, neutralize it, or simply rub it back a little bit and come back in with other values over the top. None of it is an issue. I think so many times people start painting and they look at it and think it's just not where it should be, and get very, very despondent about it and end up destroying a perfectly feasible piece of work. Now I'm coming in a little bit too light maybe. I'm just going to come in with another value down, and you can see I'm using this brush which has got a great structure within it, and as Leora said, the ruffle up old brushes can often mean that you do get some interesting marks from it. Now I'm scribbling now, as you can see, making a real old mess, and I'm just putting some lights and darks in because this cat's fur is tangled. It's bed hair, but it's certainly ruffled up. It's not nice and plaited or nice and combed like yours or my own hair. They sleep on the sides, and the hair can just get a tangled old mess. If you ever see a big old male lion just get up from a day's sleep out in the bush, and he steps up and he's got so much grass and rubbish attached to his mane and everything else, and you know, that's how it is. That's their lives, and yeah. Anyway, there we go. I'm just going to carry on now and building. Coming down here. This is not as light as it's going to be, and neither are the other places as dark as they will be. I'm just plunging around with little bits of lights and darks in here. I'm turning this brush around. It's still got a lot of use in it. It really has got so much use still as a brush. I'm going to put a little bit of orange and a little bit of that brown that's still left in there. I don't want it too supercharged with colour. Not down here. It's quite sort of oatmeal-y, lemony, not lemony, pale basic yellow colour, drab. And if it's too bright, then just punch a little bit of green into it just to kill it down, or even a bit of blue. The cobalt turquoise is a good choice because it's got the cobalt in it, so it's got the blue, and that will neutralize the color a little bit more. If you really want to neutralize it, then you're going to be using some mauves and violets in there, but there's no need to. And just tapping over the top some of this lighter colour, just dancing the fur around like so. As I said, it's very mottled here. It's very just all tied together and messy. Lockdown hair, yeah, that's about right. I've got to get mine shaven back. It's getting a bit long. Right, it's just going to come over a little bit and work up here into the area at the top of the head. And I'm doing little taps. Now you can see I am working in the direction of the fur, and I'm doing little taps because the hair here is not as long as it is up in here. I'm going to put a little bit more green and a bit of yellow in there just to take that down into the shade here a little bit more, maybe even more green. It may seem wrong, but it will give me the shadow colour in here, and just take that fur down a tab while still maintaining a level of nice colour value within it, like so. Okay, gonna run that over this eye stripe too above it, like there, and down through that side here. Little bits of green and little bits of orange popping into play. Down through this mark here, there is a definite colour of shadow, which I'm going to just put in there, and that spreads out either side of the little nose that it's got, and then comes across here to come up a little oranger. And I do stress again, we are putting none of the highlight hairs on at this stage. We are just building density of fur as best we can before we start coming back in and putting really light bits on. Just going to gently suggest a couple there. Again, they're not really there at all, but it just gives me a little darker accent to come back on later and continue with that idea. Again, there's going to be a little darker accent in here. We've got lights going on in here too, but light is only light because it's on top of, and if it's on top of, that must mean there is a layer beneath it, and even more than one layer beneath it, and each of those layers are going to be darker than the ones on top of. I hope that explains it. I hope it does. Anyway, I know what I meant. Just changing that again a little bit more. And let's just come down the side here with the shapes. Tucks away into that little face stripe and comes down to the nose. There's a little dark area there, which I nearly missed. I'm going to put that in there. Maybe even just a little stronger with a little umber. Not that strong, just enough to remember it's there. And same over here. Okay. I'm going to come across to the ear, and I'm just going to block the ear in. There's some darks there already, but I just want to suggest the interim colour that's going in, that's a general colour around most of the inside of the ear. And if I can get away with it, and a little bit of fine detail liquid, and I'm going to scribble with the tip of the brush, and these little darks and lights in here already start to suggest some of the hairs. Now, because I've done this with that liquid, it will be a little bit of a blighter when it comes to trying to put other colours into it, because they're just a bit like watercolour. It's like water, it just wants to blend with whatever's going on. Right, time for a bit of a guzz. Okay, now if you want to, and I'm not saying you should have to, but now is a fairly good time to maybe start thinking about colours of background. Now behind this little fella there is a lot of burned grass and it's very light, but directly behind him is Mum. That's what you can see in literally behind his head is Mum sitting there out of focus. So you can use Mum as a general guide. Up here we've got a lot of light fur I need to show up. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to use some of my greeny grungy colours, and I'm just going to set to and make a fairly dark area. Now I've cut a lot of the hair off, as you can see at this point. I've gone over much of it from my sketch, but it's not a problem. It will be reinstated later when I can come back in and use that against these really dark passages. Now I can take that dark all the way round if I want to, just before the ear, because I know when I get to the ear I want to start getting a bit lighter. This is called counter change. This is where you can start using the background to throw out areas that are light or dark on the opposite on your animal, and it helps to throw the animal out. So I'm just putting this general lovely suggestive lights and darks on, blending it out so it's nothing of one thing or another. I can increase the color, I can make it a little lighter, paler. I can bring some nice whites in across here to enliven it, maybe a cooler color, the green coming into that if I want to. That's probably a little too strong if I'm honest, so I can neutralize that down with some orange into that. Now it turns it to a more effective color as it comes down. It's certainly a little bit stronger in nice chroma than this one, so we can put that lovely color in. Again, if we like it, we can bring it all the way down to there. It's still going to be quite dark compared to the area of the cat around, so we've already made a few decisions. Now then, we've got light coming across the ear. I think the ear on the real cat is, I think mine's a little bit sharp on the drawing. I may have to make that a little rounder. I'm just looking at the photo, and I think the cat has its rounder here, but I can adjust that. That's not a problem. But that's the whole idea of the drawing, the painting. It helps you start to understand what you are working on, and you can start making judgments on it and changing things. And you'll notice that I'm referring back to the one that the patrons are going to get to see later this week, that the whole of the painting was a situation of refinement, and I carried on refine. Now as this comes down, the hairs get somewhat darker, so I'm going to make that somewhat lighter coming down into here, so that my darker hairs will then really show up and catch on the back of the cat as I come down. I can play around with all sorts of colours here. Don't go with too mad with too many. Try and keep a fairly stable consistency of colour. Don't suddenly do loads of one and then almost make it look like a traffic light. That doesn't really help. But just keep it within certain areas of warms and cools, lights and darks. I don't quite like that, so I'm going to come back out. I'm going to change that colour, shift it to the blue values back up in here instead of the reds. I can blend this as much as I want, or I can just leave it to dry and come over with a second go next time. It really doesn't matter. It's where you want to take it in your own picture. So my background is more suggestive of what's going on than what is actually behind it, because obviously I'm not painting his mum blurred out behind him. Can I come across with a medium value, because there is a lot of lighter hairs and white hairs at this point, so I can get away with this nice medium value here, taking that off and away, and then come back into the side of the head here, where I can go more oatmeal-y as the colour on its mother suggests. I have lots of options. I'm not going to really come down any further. I've just started the ball rolling, and to see where we go with that. Okay. I think another glug. Right. come down now with maybe some more of these medium values in here, and I'm just dusting over the dark ones that I put earlier. So I'm almost losing them to a point, but I'm giving myself a very generalized area to work in, and I'm quite happy to use some of those oranges mixed with that cobalt turquoise. It's a really useful blue-green, and it does treat the oranges and makes them a little cooler, and they sort of suggest the depths within of the hairs, the different hairs. And coming down here, I'm going to put some in here as well. I quite like what's happening with these, with this green in the mix. And although it's green and not blue, it still acts as a semi complement situation with the orange and the yellow, so it's not a bad thing. But if it's too much, when we get to the other end of it and we start putting it in, we can always come back in with some other tones, some other values. None of it is, as I always say to you, is never set in stone. It is merely to give you a starting point. So I'm just literally, this you can call my blocking in stage. And once we get that, we go through with the second stage, and the second stage will be quite literally to build upon the blocking stage with a little less brushwork and more detail, and we then come back in and we continue that process until we end up with our finished product. Right, now I've got lots of lights to come on here, but I don't want to go in with light. You can see down the coat here there is a lot of light fur. I don't want to do that. I'm going to lighten it a shade, but I want to come in with the more oranges and a bit of that green and more white, and just play around with that until I get something about there which is not white, not light, warmer and not cool. So when I come in, I'm going around some of these marks. I want to paint all my dark marks out, but I just want to give a sense of that there is other values going on here that we can see. Some of them will be lighter later on, and some of them will be darker later on. And it's not, I'm not saying that just to hedge my bets. It's a fact. We're going to put lights and darks back in, and we're going to go each way on this each time. So it is merely this blocking in section that we are worried about. But even though hair or fur gets lighter in places, I'm not necessarily starting off that way. I'm going in with a medium value so that I can come out from like here and put a sort of little nice warm section in there, for instance. Looking at this, looking at the greens, that green is really... Wendy, that's a good shirt of yours, that light Winsor & Newton green. I'm using it quite a lot, and it works very, very well. It's a nice screen. I'm glad you brought it to my attention. Thank you. But anyway, I'm just putting in some of the shadow fur that are coming away from some of these dark marks now, that give me that little statement. I don't want to lose all of my black fur, but at the same time, you remember I wasn't telling you that each of the marks was absolutely spot on as it should have been. These are merely placed here, and I can work on them, over them, through them, around them as I feel the need to do. I'm merely going to block in. It gets a little bit warmer, a little more orangey, more yellow, maybe not necessarily yellow, cadmium yellow, but maybe some of the richer oxide of yellow. And that's going to give me some little taps underneath some of these bits of fur, going down here with some of their marks, and down under that chin area there, and right up under that chin area. Now if I was working like this, I would be working standing up at an easel. I would not be working this angle. on an oil painting like this, I can assure you. So if you are thinking of doing this and you do have the availability of a nice proper studio type easel, or at least one that will stand up and hold the painting, suggest you use it, and use a mole stick to come in across the painting and work in the finer detail like this as and when you need it. Mole stick, not a plain stick. This is a plain stick. The mole stick's got a nice ball or something, or piece of cloth on the end that you can put down gently, and you can keep your hand working up and down like this. There are many devices for an upright easel. I have made them myself over the time, and it is easy to make your own versions of those. Now I'm just coming in because I've forgotten quite a part of this mouth stripe here, marking, so I'm going to put that in now. I'm going to just check my drawing area down through there, I think, and it comes as a square there at the corner of the mouth, like so, and it runs around like that, quite thickens up, but comes down that way, and that has got a little bit more there than I've given it. Nice little shape to it there. Okay, I can correct anything that's wrong with that later. I'm not too worried at the moment. I just want to get it established, and it was not there, so it needed to be put in. Okay, so I'm looking at that and seeing where I need to take some other colours now. I'm going to bring some of these darks off the end of here. There. Not worried about any of this at the moment. Right. Colin, I didn't see you creep in the side there, mate. I do apologise for not saying hi earlier. Good evening, mate. Glad you're here. Are you still with us, John, from Piccadilly? Right. Just going to start bringing in some lovely other oranges, little flecks now, little taps. Now I will not be painting every hair that you see on this cat. I've never done that with any of my paintings ever. I don't tend to start now. I try as best I can. I've always said, when people ask me how do I depict fur, I try and depict it by using brush marks and strokes, as opposed to try and paint in every single fur. I know there are realists out there that will give you every fur, and some on top of that will give you every piece of fur, and they'll give you a shadow and a highlight side to that piece of fur as well. And believe you me, they can do it. It would drive me nuts, and I'd have probably blown my brains out before I got halfway down the nose of this thing. But it can be done. Right, I'm just going to tap a little bit of light in there, just a little bit, to give me an indication of the sort of value I'm going to be looking for. Up in here, just a little bit in there, just to give me that little touch, that little bit of light. I'm going to do the same on around the muzzle, the nose here, just a little bit of light there. Nothing much. They're little tweaks, they're little indicators for colour value, nothing more. A little bit in here maybe. And then I'm going to clean the brush. Ultra realism, absolutely, Brooklyn. I've got my son-in-law and my daughter. Both of them have been model painters for years. I mean, he grew up as a boy playing Dungeons and Dragons, went on and worked for Games Workshop and all these other outfits. Now he helps design new games, but he's always been a painter and a master painter, doing lots of competition stuff. And the pair of them do it together now. And you know, they can take I mean, these figures, some of them are very, very small. If you can see that sort of that indication. And you know, you can imagine how big a mouth is on something. and if it's got fangs, they can put the colour of the fang in. They can put a light and a shadow side to the fang and the teeth, and put a bit of blood on it, and it looks absolutely smooth as a whistle. I don't know how they do it, but they do it, and they're not on their own with that. I mean, many people can who paint these army figures, these games figures, they can do such stunning jobs. Anyway, I digress. I'm going to put a little bit of cooler blue under here, just that lovely little pale blue accent, which I used some ultra, did I use ultramarine? No, cobalt for that. I'm just going to tap that in there because that is a shadow side to the light side. Now you may think that's a bit strong, and I would agree, it probably is a little strong, but it gives me that great indication that I can come over and put some lighter hairs on it further along should I wish to do so. Just a little bit of light there, and we've got a different colour on the other side. I'm going to put a little touch of this down through the edge of the nose here. There's little indicators for me, and I can take that down through here if I want to. Just general little dusting, and under the chin. Just a little dusting of that bluer colour, because we will come back in with other colours. We're coming up with a lighter colour through here, down there like so, and a little bit around the top end of his little button nose. I wouldn't say that too closely with his mother sitting around. She may take offence to that. There we go. So we've got a little bit of a suggestion of his nose. Yes, I know Andrew. I don't know him personally. I know of him and his style and his videos. Well worth watching. Very good artist. He's an Australian living in New Zealand. But a really good painter. He's not frightened of doing big canvases either, gotta say. He frightens the life out of me with some of the sizes, but he's got the means and the studio space to be able to do such a thing, so hats off to the guy. He does a cracking job. Right, I'm going to come in with a bit more yellow into there. I want to put a little exciting bit of yellow under here, just as, again, it's a suggestion of reflected light and some offer there too. And all this will start to be refined very, very soon. Tracy, you got to. I mean, yeah, he is good, and he's a great plein air painter too. Got to be said. Oh, I didn't mean that to be that light too soon. Just wanted to put a little warmer light up in there. Now I'm looking now to see where there are little lights, little darks, as we move on with this. Little light section in there, and there is a little bit of a light running around that part of the eye, just enough to see it. Okay. All right. Going to lighten some of this up in here. Now we're going to, you see me start putting in smaller taps, more suggestive. We're still not in the fine hair market. We are just placing little taps here and there to start building the whole thing, and it is a succession of layer. I'm going to come back and look at the top of the head again. Now we've got this background, I'm going to predominantly plump for that and leave that at that point. Whether or not I change other areas about it, I don't know, but I'm going to come in with not a light colour, a medium colour, but I'm going to be looking at flicking the brush up into this space with some of these early high fluffy headshot, top of the head bits of fur, but they're not the lightest ones. We're going to save those when we come back in, and just putting in a few of the darker ones that will be seen around and behind. They don't make this that total statement. You need to leave some space or you're going to end up with them all up here somewhere. Just putting 1 or 2 in, and I'm using the sharp edge, although the edge of my brush is so worn and splayed, but I'm using as much as I can a sharp edge. If your brush, like mine, is becoming a little too unruly, then break out a new one if you've got one. These brushes, I've got to say, are so good, and I use the manufacturer of Rosemary and Company, only because I sell them at the gallery, so I can supply them. But that even without, I would still buy them even if I couldn't supply them commercially. And it's only a few of us that can do that. Only because I've known Rosemary for many years, and that's how it's been done, and we've been doing that with her for a long time. But she does a marvelous job with her brushes, and because of the fact that they are all handmade on her premises, they cut out the middle people. They do not allow other companies to, big companies to sell them, and that way they keep the end user price right the way down, which is really fantastic. Now I'm starting to build 1 or 2 little marks in here that are becoming more suggestive of the head at the moment. Jim, got to run, we'll catch Reed. Great, Jim, thanks ever so much, mate. Yeah, there are many brush makers out there, I've got to say, and but I don't think any really compete with Rosemary at the end of the day. I mean, she is trained, I believe, by Winsor and Newton years ago, and then decided a long time after that to sort of go it alone, and I'm so glad she did. She's made a lot of happy artists around the world, not just in the UK, but her brushes are bought by big name artists the world over. They just adore her brushes. And I'm going to round this here off. I said I was going to make this a little rounder, didn't I? I'm going to do that because I think my drawing was just a tad out. I'm going to take that ear around there a little bit more, and then it comes out to this other lobe there. I think that's probably closer to it. I want to come in with more darks now. Now you can use a rigger for these as well. You don't have to have this type of brush. I can paint now. I'll put this one down just to show you that you can paint with a rigger. I will go back to the other brush because I'm preferring it for this particular job, but you've got the options. Going to come in with a bit of orange into my umber. Going to make it a little bit more fluid. A little bit of that liquid fine detail into it. I'm not sure if I really like that at the moment, but I'm just playing around with the idea with it. Got a bit of blue, bit of umber into there, a bit more blue just to take it down, not totally, because again I've got 1 colour, 2 colours, 3 colours, and I'm using all 3 areas. Maybe add a little bit of red to that, a little bit of that liquid into there, and just start to play around with some of these darks in here and just tap around with a rigger, doing the same job pretty much as I was doing with the other brush. Just dropping little marks in, taps here, taps there. That's all this is about. And take some of those darks right the way over to here, because there is a little bit of fur. If you can imagine that I don't know how I can do this on camera, but if you can imagine that is there, the profile of the ear, but only if I do that to it, now you get the shape of the ear. And that, I'll just ruin my tape, but that's how you get the ear. And so this is the roundness that you see here and here. And what you've got is a few taps down here of dark, where you've got foreshortening, and you're looking right down into the depths of the fur, right down the channel of the fur. And that's how you start looking at the realism, because you start seeing these little bits and pieces that now we've got such a foreshortening, we're looking at that edge. And I'm just coming down here like so. I'm just going to tap that in a little bit dark around here too. We can come back in with some lights over that. That is not an issue. I just need to get the depth of darks working so I can bring the lights out of it. Come in with a bit more blue, deepen it down into the ear canal right at the back here. Almost losing all my light areas in favour of the darks to begin with. Make them a little warmer. Getting a bit too cool at that point. Not nice, don't like that. A little bit warmth in there too. Like so. Now, see, I've already got paint because I'm rubbing on here. You can see where I've smudged it. And this is why working on the upright is better. And if you're not, certainly having a piece of this handy to be able to come over the top of previous done work without messing it up. Like so. A bit cooler through here. This mark is quite cool. I do love painting wildlife, got to be said, and I have one of my friends exclaim, "Wow, you're doing wildlife again today," which was nice. The person is watching tonight and does know who that person is. But along with my wife, who's been badgering me to get back to doing some more wildlife of late. I've done a lot of everything else, I've got to be said, but I haven't done enough wildlife. Maybe I shouldn't run away from it too much. Not that I'm running away from it, but I just got very busy doing many other things and all the filming, so wildlife has pretty much taken a back seat. I come in with a few more darks down through the back here. They are quite cool, and there's quite a coolness going on over there, so I'm going to put in a few other marks, a few cobalt blues into my umber mixes so that it cools down the darks. I'm just going to put in a few dark layers now. Not that heavy, a bit too heavy, a bit clumsy, but it's not a big worry either, to be honest, because there's so many dark hairs there that a few clumped together like that with a little smudge on them, you're not going to really notice them, and they're not going to detract. I like it. Yes, the tape roll has suffered, but I think with an elastoplast it may recover. But I will send it your best wishes, Leora. Don't worry. It does need a little bit of a kind word. Now I'm just gently coming in with some of these dark marks. All of these sort of mid-tone values you're seeing right out into that background looking like this are setting up for the even fewer, believe it or not, highlight ones that will appear next week. They won't appear this week because I do need the paint to settle down before I start getting into that. This is a whole lot of fun, gotta say. I haven't done a cheetah's head for a long time. Must be about 5 or 6 years since I've done one. Even longer than that, to be honest with you. So it is long overdue. And this picture from Stefan I've been meaning to paint for years. Often when we talk he asks, have I done it yet? And I have to keep saying I'm sorry I haven't got to it yet. But now I can look him in the face next time I see him and say, yeah, there you go, it's done. sorted. And most enjoyable it was too. Just coming across here with a few very striking dark diagonal line through there, coming down into the fur, the cheek, the back of the cheek. Okay. Now what you've seen me do predominantly is bounce all over this picture, and that tends to be the way. Once I'm really quite happy with the way the eyes are starting to go, and I feel that I'm sort of happy enough to move on, then I will move on, but I will bounce across the whole picture, because the whole picture needs bringing up at the same moment in time. Every stroke is literally the sum total of all your learning to that point. And if you start here and finish before you go to there, before you go to there, by the time you get down to the bottom, you've learned a lot more than you've learned up there. So you then have to go back there to carry on building that to the same degree as this. Whereas if you build the whole picture together, it becomes the sum total of all your learning on that very last brush mark. And because it's benefited from brush marks all over it, all the way through the painting of it, then they will each carry a significant amount of learning at that point. Did that make sense? I really hope it did. So I'm not going to say it again. And just changing shapes and refining. That antelope you're going to see is literally a whole video of the drawing and the further work to refine. Look, check, recheck, refine. More brush marks, more brush strokes, a little tweak here, a little tweak there. That's what it's always about. It's quite cool, that little bit on the ear. Put a bit more cobalt into the side of that, maybe a tap of pale whitish colour just to come in to the back end of it. Just to suggest that that's probably a little too much if I'm honest. So let's come back in with some darker brown blue and just use that, neutralise that into that. It's probably the better colour now. And a little bit of dark around the top of the light, so I'm going to just put that in. A little bit of brown, a little bit of black, a little bit of blue, just around that little square. I think he's had a little nick out of his ear somewhere around there at some point. It looks definitely like there's a bit of white to come out there, which I've missed, but we'll put that in. But I think he's had a little nick out the ear at some point. Maybe he had a tussle with something when he was younger, or mum's had a go, or one of the siblings have had a go. Just bring some of that down through there. Part of me thinks that ear I've got is a bit too small as well. I'm looking at it. I think it needs to be a little bit further out. I'm going to come in with just a suggestion with a bit of blue-white colour. I'm just going to take this out a little bit further than I've got it, just to see if I like the extra and increased length to the ear. I can always come back with it if I don't like it. Just bring that in there like so, and out through there to give that side. And I think that's probably a little bit it. Again, it's just adjusting one's drawing as you go along. I mean, we draw, unless you're doing a faithful trace from a photograph itself, which you can do of course, then you know your drawing's always going to be a little bit off maybe, and need just checking to make sure how accurate you really are making some of your marks. But in truth, you're not going to make everything spot on. I know if I was to overlay one bit over the other, it may have you know, it may have a difference on it, and that's fine. I've got no problem with that. Right. Okay. Now, my patrons among you, I haven't seen too many of you try out the last couple of videos that I've done. The reference is up there. I haven't seen any little girls appear yet, and I haven't seen any of the others. So maybe that you guys will start putting a few of them out on our Patreon channel. Let's have a look at them, see what's been going on, see what you're doing. You don't have to, of course. I'm just saying I haven't noticed any. Okay, it's all about slow pushing forward. I've got a little bit brown needed in there, got a little bit blue up the top there. I'm going to take that out and put some more umber, and deliberately putting a little bit of red into that just to shake that blue down a little bit. Alright, bring some more information through here. And although I could keep this sort of side of it going for a long time, you know, refining little bits here, little bits there, as I've suggested all the way, I do want to try and take this a little further this evening, as far as I can, and get some other values going on. Come down into that cheek. I'm moving my screen because I've got the cat quite large, as I said earlier, and I've got some marks to put in the face here. No excuse, Wendy. I know that you can do all of it. And I'm sure you'll get around to it when the time's right. But that's just one of you. There are 20 odd patrons, so what are all the other excuses, I wonder? Doesn't matter. Anyway, there we go. I'm just going to bring that down there now. It's got a little bit too blue in there. Keep picking up just a little bit too much blue. That's way too red. Somewhere I'll get the happy medium in a minute and get it right. Don't know what that is. Okay. Now this is pretty much a dirty purple because I'm using some of the reds and some of the cobalt blue to make this sort of unwitting dark colour, which is, as I say, technically it's a bit of a dirty old violet colour because it's got very little brown in it, although I'm just putting some in now just to suggest some of these stronger little dark marks around here. And they are fairly heavy at the moment, but they will be killed off a little bit in subsequent layers. It's just trying to suggest some of these dark passages of dirty grimy colours underneath. I'm going to come to a bit of a grungy greeny brown dirty colour through here that we can start to see some coming off of the side here, some of this coming in. And these are little shadow marks that are coming down into this area here. And then we can come over with the lights and build up on that. All right, Teresa, I will be. That's interesting, guys, because I know that not all of you are patrons watching tonight, so please forgive me if you're not, if I just talk a little bit about this with the patrons who are watching. But guys, I do comment on your work. I do hope that the comments I leave you are, I'm sort of very aware, I don't want to upset anybody with any comments that I make. I try to be, I try to give you good advice, and I will, you know, I don't like to upset people. If I think there's a problem, I do try and say it without the idea of offending. But I also do try and find some very positive parts to the painting too. And most paintings, whoever paints them, there are always going to be good and bad points, mine included. We all do paintings and we all make errors, though we don't always see them. And as much as we try hard to make sure we don't do them, unfortunately, it's a fact of life. Sometimes we do, and we don't necessarily see the mistake that we created. And it does take somebody else to look at it. And my biggest critic is my wife, and she will take a look and tell me exactly what she thinks of a piece of mine, if it works or if it doesn't work. Now you can see me just popping in here with taps, little taps of extra colour to suggest broken hairs over and above the eyes. This is when we're starting to get some more detail coming in now, and checking that our lines and our shapes and everything we're putting in is honing in. And it may or may not be the last pass on the eyes. It may be that we don't need to do anymore. It may be that I have got this far with an eye and rubbed it out and started again. It can happen. But the more care you take at this point, the less chance of that becoming an issue. Like so. I'm going to work on the other one because that's still quite crude as well. Especially across the top here where you got these little rogue hairs that sort of punch, they can really change the shape of what you see in an eye, and you can really paint a bad eye if you get that wrong. Now, if I look at this in the cool light of day and discover something that really doesn't look quite right, I'm a bit worried about that shape there. It's a little bit too strong. So I'm just going to come in. But if I do see something before next week, I may just nip in and alter it. But if I do anything like that, I will promise that I will explain to you what I've done and why I did it. I'm going to take that in there, soften that little lump on the side there. I may have to then repaint a little bit of it, but I think that is probably a little truer to where it needs to be. Just going to come around here with a slightly deeper shade around there, soften that mark there and there, and then just come down with a darker mark there. Okay, that makes it a little softer too. Now let's read some of this back. I didn't see that one from Wendy on the commissions. Well, good luck with that one, Keith. You know where I am if you need any help. I'm sorry to hear of your loss, mate. Good. No, absolutely truth, John. I never do that. No, you didn't, Tracy. I hope you didn't. And I hope it had nothing to do with what I said. Good. Right, sorry, Jimmy. There's a lot of comments I've been missing there, so I just caught up with them. Yeah, I mean, I've always understood from people. I'm just going to tilt that light down a little bit, or turn it down just a tad. Bear with me, I'm just fumbling around with the lights, trying to hopefully now you can see a little more of what the colours I'm painting. It's got a little bit blown out by the glare of the light. Although I've gone a bit too yellow. I'm going to turn that up a little bit and bring the other one down. That's better, I think. A little better anyway. I've always been told when it comes to that is that if you do have a negative thing to say about somebody, or in this case somebody's work, it's always advisable to make sure you do end on a positive. If you're going to beat somebody up over something, then at least leave them feeling that they can lick their wounds, pick up and move on. And I don't mean that horribly at all. I mean, it just, you know, sometimes we all have something that needs to be said about something, and I'm certainly no different. And but it's always nice to know that actually, even though if it wasn't quite right, you nearly got it right, and there are good points as well as the bad points. So I always try and leave you guys with positive remarks at the end of a comment, and hopefully you've got something from that to move on with. I'm going to come in with a bit more orange, a bit more yellow, just to mix a few warm colours up in advance. A little bit of that liquid into that. I just want to draw into some of that shape and just pretend we've got scribbling little hairs building up into some of these ear structure. Lots of lovely little taps of colour. Little windy hairs that are all sort of, yeah, you know what I'm saying. And using the rigger for this, and I could use the other one, but that one I keep forgetting to put the rigger back down again, if I'm honest. So I'm just starting to build a few extra colour sources in here to show that we've got depth through the hairs, but they are quite dark in there, but they are getting lighter, and some of them are catching more light than others. But we haven't used our lightest ones as yet. Now I've got a great big painting in my gallery which is 5 foot by 2.5 foot of two lions. Some of you have seen it on my website. It's called Luango Courtship, and you know, the two lions on there as well as all the background took 6 months of painting when I first painted it. So it's a stunning piece. It's a big piece, but it's a stunning piece, but it did take an awful lot of work to get it to where I could say it was finished. And that and this are being painted pretty much in the same way. Not a problem. That's what I'm here for, Tracy. Give you as much help as I can, you know that. Yeah, I had some of that as well. Alright, I'm just going to bring a few little just suggestive lighter marks in. Just to give you some idea of how fine we can make some of these hairs appear in the ear. And you get the idea of how this painting takes and how long it might take. Yeah, this is only a 10 by 12. You imagine doing 20 by 16, 20 by 30, 5 foot by whatever. It soon racks up some hours. But I do like the challenge of trying to make the hair look real as I can. And still want to make it look painterly as well. I don't try and create a photograph. I'm not that good. I just love to try and pit myself against the photo and try and make a painting with the oil that just looks as close to the real as I can get it. You still with us, Luke? You still watching? You can see how, you know, you can exactly see how this takes a while to do. Just come down and start suggesting some of these little hairs coming down the head here. There's much long hairs as little taps. They're little fluffy hairs in a sense, very baby hairs. So I don't paint each and every one. They're like little thick clusters in a sense, with the odd small one as a highlight appearing later on as needed. But watch the way that they are going. Here they're still going upwards, but they're going to start rolling over now and start then rolling around on each other as they come around towards the ear, like so. And don't do regimented rows, you know, you don't do one mark, another mark, another mark, another mark. They're not little soldiers. They're really random. Just tap away and move the brush in random movements. Try avoiding patterns. Humankind love to see pattern, and we respond to pattern, shape and form. We respond to it all the time, but it really doesn't work when we're trying to paint. Now here I am scribbling again, but a slightly lighter value. I'm trying to show you how the hair is just matted around in all sorts. And it may have to go, when it's dry, I may have to go back in and redo some of it. But at the moment, I'm quite happy with the way that's going. And we're just going to build the depth in there. Here it's just pushing up a little bit. And what I might do, guys, is that if I feel I've got a couple of hours of highlights to do next week, I may, if I may bring this lot up to this lot so that we can pursue it from there. Unless you object, I mean, I don't mind leaving it, but it might take it on a little longer. I really don't mind. It's up to everybody, really. You can watch every painful brush stroke if you wish. Or I can jump it a little bit. Now I'm going to put a couple of little darker marks. I've kept that dark back for the reason of just the little shadowy areas in here where one or two of those are almost end on. What sounds good to you, Judy and Leora? Be specific. Jump it or don't jump it, I don't mind. We've got a nice little whitish tuft coming out there, and I don't want to lose that. It sort of comes down, it's a little bit matted up, so it's coming down the side here and then pushing back up in there. How are all the pastels going, Leora? I won't stop on it, but I just sort of, whether or not you want to see loads of this sort of stuff going on, or whether you want me to jump start the bottom and bring it up to this so that we carry on to a conclusion next week, or I can just keep it going until it is finished. I don't mind, it's really up to you guys. That didn't mean to happen, could have done without that. Okay. I really don't mind. As long as I'm not going to bore the heck out of you all, I really don't mind at all. Okay, Leora, got that. Thank you. That's very kind of you to say that, madam. Just tapped a little bit of lemon into some of these more yellowish ends here. Let's see how that looks. I think it's fine. Just 1 or 2 lights just to get a little bit of colour going up in here. Just putting 1 or 2 extra lights up in here. These aren't the real lights at the moment, they're just a little stage further. We'll come in with some highlights around the eyes next week. Just putting a few extra lights around here. And start bringing a few into here as well now. Start bringing this up. Little finer taps. The hairs here are short and little stubby. Now bring that blue up a little bit more than it is, so don't worry about that. You can see that the brush is actually splitting as I push it around, which is good because it's giving me that nice little stubby little fur bit that I quite like to see. Coming up pretty much sideways through here. What I do need to do just before we finish for this evening is to do a little bit of the nose and the muzzle area, which has been neglected, to be honest. So we'll leave that there for the moment. We'll just come into some of our darks again, and I'm going to just pull the cat up a little bit just to look at the area of the nose. I'm going to put this in pretty much dark all the way through just to start with, and then next week I will come in and refine as much of the shape as I want to put in. We have a nice strong statement of the dark on the nose. coming down to the mouth parts through there, and just take that dark line down through there and off to one side there. Got a nice dark already on there, and that is to there. Now I see I've got that wrong there, so that needs to come up, and that dark runs up that shape around there, not even there even. Let's just take that off. What I said to you all along, it's a case of look, refine, look again, and further refine. So let's take that down through there, and that means we've got to lose some of that there and come up into here with that dark. Then that just, even that is a little bit too low still. Not a problem, but it has to be right. So that's the side coming down there. Let's put that in there. Okay, that I can live with, and then that is powerfully under the slight different shape to there. All right, okay, I'll look at that, and I think that we've got to tuck just a little bit of this out here, just come in. I'm just putting that in now so that I know that I've got to refine that next time we come into it, and a little shape in there and there, and just reverse painting in a sense. I'm just knocking back some of the colors so that I can see that I've got to just shape up some of this drawing that is a little bit out of where it should be. But it's a case of just look, look, look. Always just look and refine. Just draw that in like so. And let us just put some pale colour in here to set this up for the following week. Like so. So that will sit there and dry off and give me a base for next week. Here I'm going to bring this up a little more into here. And we've got a little bit of light over here too. Oh, okay, hang on a minute. Laura, I need to start dinner, so we'll watch the rest later. Have a good evening, Paul, Wendy, and everyone. Laura, thank you very much. Have a lovely evening. And catch you soon, I hope. And I hope your pastel paintings are really doing well. I keep looking out for the posts that you put out. That's great. I have to put some more on of your pastels on our community page if you get the chance. It'd be lovely to see some more on the Patreon community channel. And we'd all love to see your lovely pastels on there too. Alright, just going to come under here with a bit of a brighter light through there. Just stabbing it in at the moment. I'm going to put some cooler colour as we come back there. Although it's a bit whiter, I'm not worried about that. Okay. We'll stop in another 5 minutes. That'll be 2 hours, and hopefully we can then finish up, say our Cheerios as it were, and we can come back. Now I'm going to come back in very quickly and just suggest some lighter colour in there, just trying to give my idea of sort of the lights and darks that I'm going to be using. Don't want to go too light because I need some shadowy areas in there. I'm just going to come across very similarly like that, right up to the edge here. Now then, I don't want to lose my drawing too much, so I'm just going to come down here I suggest that line of light there. That's no, so I've got that wrong already. There's a line of light that comes down here that I'm missing into the chin, but then there is a little bit of dark that is down here under there, which I have missed, so let's get that in. Right, so that becomes one up here, and just put some of that in together here. Alright, just tapping a few pieces in there. This is more indication for me between now and next week. So I'm looking at where we've got lights, we've got darks, and we've got some longer hair through here. This is coming sweeping down under here and out through there. Okay, that's cool. I can work with that. I used to love those, they were good. I don't even know if we're going to be having any more, because I just don't think I'll be able to spare the time with classes and stuff in the future. Adding a little bit more light into there. And we're getting sort of the point where we can start looking at putting some highlights in one or two places, just slowly building information up. I don't try and put too many individual hairs on. The nose are so short and it would quite frankly look quite ridiculous, so you don't need to put too many on there. Just colour suggestions more than anything else. Just breaking into some of that dark line I had, just breaking it up and softening the effect. I mean, you can get sharp edges, but this is a little baby cat. And we want it to be soft and just lovely, you know. And it's a little, the same idea of putting extra large pupils into kitties' eyes when you do a kitty painting. Same idea, is just to lessen the effect, or make them a little cuter. And at the end of the day, that's what will sell your painting, is the fact that we know it's a lovely kitten, albeit from a major predator, but we also know that we want it to remain really pretty and tug at our heartstrings. There we are. Okay, I think I'm going to call it a day. We're on the 2-hour mark. So please bear with me. I hope that we will get to a point close to finish next week. I couldn't be honest and say we will, but I will look at this during the week. If there's something that sticks out and hits me in the face, I'll deal with it. Otherwise, it will stay as is until we get back to it next week, and hopefully we can take it a lot further into the finish. Right, now then, where are we on the chat? I don't know, Wendy. Let's just get out of lockdown first and get back on with our regular stuff. When you coming to Kent, Tracy? Sue, good evening. I didn't see you earlier. Sorry if I missed you signing in. Okay, well, there we go. We've got so far with this, and I will complete this little picture, I hope next week, or the week after at worst. Whether or not we run it as a third stream, if that's the case, I really don't know at this stage. But I think we've done quite well tonight for 2 hours of painting. and you can understand fully why I decided to do the drawing side of it and get the underpainting side of it to that point before we went ahead tonight, because you know, you'd still be looking at me scribbling at this stage otherwise. Right, yes, Colin, I'll talk to you tomorrow, mate. No problems at all. Glennis, thank you for that. Thank you for watching. Yeah, John, glad you made it, and good to see you, and talk to you soon, I'm sure. Good. Well, you'll have to come in the gallery more often if we ever get open again. Hopefully we will. Yes, the Spitfires are bound down our way. Good. Well done, Derek. That's great stuff. Hopefully you've got a good deal to go with it and you've enjoyed that. I think I've got to change a little bit. I've just been spotting. Before I go, I just want to put in a little bit of dark around here. I think there's a little bit more of a excuse me, people, just a little bit more of a roundness in there than I've allowed. So I'm just going to tap that in so I don't forget it. Just a slightly different shape to the eye than I had. There you go. It matches more the other one now. But that's fine. Just a small thing. Good night, Derek. Paul, good evening and good night. Brilliant. It's amazing watching you work. We'll have to watch some Sanding Junction tomorrow. Nice one, Paul. Thank you very, very much, mate. Keith, good evening to you. And yeah, thank you very much. All right, everybody. So everyone's winding away and going off. So I will let you all say goodbye to each other. And I look forward to your company next Monday evening for more of this. And don't forget, Patreons, Friday evening, your one. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but it will be something, I'm sure. It always is. So we'll do something together on Friday evening. And don't forget, this Friday there will be my regular weekly YouTube video going up, which will be for your patrons, not such a great thing. It will be a shortened time-lapse version of the watercolor that I did, I hope, on Friday. So that will be going out. And don't forget to watch out for the $10 patron video for November. That I hope will be out very, very shortly. What else to tell you? Not a lot too much more. Yeah, just keep having fun. Stay safe, everybody. Stay away from other people. And it sounds awful, doesn't it? But you know what I mean. And stay healthy and keep painting. Have fun. I'll catch you all very, very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.